Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the talk series at Serendipity Arts Festival. As many of you are aware, SAF is one of South Asia's largest multidisciplinary festivals that brings together performative, visual, and culinary practices from India and beyond. With today's panel titled Towards a Sustainable Evolution of Cultural Festivals, we look forward to discussing a sustainable future for festivals with a special focus on accessibility and inclusivity and the building of healthy support networks. We are delighted to have with us Gary Kerr, Professor of Festival and Event Management, Edinburgh Napier University, Smriti Rajkaria, Director, Serendipity Arts Foundation and Festival, Jeff Khan, Creative Director, Asiatopa, and Natalia Alvarez Simo, Artistic Director, Conde Duque Center for Contemporary Culture. The panel will be moderated by Ruchira Das, Director Arts, British Council India. I'd like to invite Ruchira to take this conversation forward.
Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. It's lovely to see many familiar faces, some unfamiliar faces, and I'm so delighted to be moderating this panel. It's a brilliant panel with some representatives of some fabulous festivals, and as some of you would be, hopefully all of you are aware of the work we do at the British Council. In the arts, we connect artists, our organizations across India and the UK, to come up with creative collaborations, experiment, innovate, and festivals is a very, very large platform for us. As some of you might know, we supported the building of a website called Festivals from India. We have Rashmi here from Artex who made that happen. It's a vibrant space where festivals are listed to, and you can actually see how it's growing. The festival scene is growing, from very niche, focused festivals to large multi-arts festivals like the one that we are at right now. It's a scene that's really growing, but as it's growing, it also makes it important for us to think about concepts of sustainability and not just the environment, but like we just heard at the introduction, looking at inclusion, looking at accessibility, and we hope that in the 90 minutes that we have here, we'll be able to touch upon a few of those aspects with examples from your work and the festivals that you are involved with. And just to share the format, at the end for 15 minutes or so, we'll also take questions from the audience. So if you have any burning questions you want to ask, then please do take the opportunity to do so then. So with having said that, I think let's start. So I would like all of you, if you could just share a little introduction about the festival that you're working in, with maybe a little focus on the local context that you operate in. Yeah, so should we start with you, Jeff?
Sure. Thank you, and a little bit of jet lag. Thank you to Smriti and Prerna and Nandita and Serendipity for having me here. It's my second Serendipity Arts Festival, and I'm still sort of awestruck by the scale and what you achieve with this festival and the spread of art forms. It's always very inspiring to be here, and especially for myself, who is an artist and curator based in Naarm, which is Melbourne, Australia, originally from Perth, Western Australia, the most isolated capital city in the whole world. Where, it's a place where to grow up in the arts means to have to be curious about everything, to always be curious about what's happening in other art forms, what's happening in other places. And Perth is a little bit of a microcosm for Australia, which itself is an island, continent, and nation with a very complex First Nations and multicultural history. Where yeah, in Perth we're closer to Singapore than to Sydney, so you're always dealing with this very vast distance working from Australia. And I think this desire to look outward and connect with other cultures and other places, especially because we have a very sort of multicultural heritage, is really sort of an important part of what we think about when we think about what the role of the arts is in Australia, what the role of festivals are, and sort of kind of breaching those divides, I guess. So I've just sort of recently taken up a new job at Asia Topa, where there's some slides. We've just launched our program in the last month, so this is hot off the press. It's all live. Asia Topa is the Asia Pacific Triennial of Performing Arts. So it's a triennial festival. It happens every 3 years. There's only been 2 previous editions in 2017 and 2020. So it's a relatively sort of young initiative. The 2020 festival happened right on the eve of the pandemic. So it was in February, March 2020, just as borders were starting to close. And amazingly, 80% of the festival was able to happen before borders started being closed and artists started having to dive roll under the border at the airport to get home safely before international travel became impossible for a number of years. So although this is the 3rd edition of Asia Topa, it will be the first edition that's happened in 5 years. It took a bit of a hiatus. Obviously, internationally, what it means to hold an international festival really transformed, was really sort of challenged. And so there was a desire to see some new leadership, to see a new kind of creative vision, which is where sort of I came into the festival. So I started as the creative director in 2022, and looking ahead to sort of 2.5 years and sort of trying to rebuild over that time. I just got on a lot of planes to a lot of different places, which you have to do from Australia. It's interesting thinking about sustainability, and I know a lot of European colleagues are thinking about not flying, reducing airtime, but it's just impossible from Australia if you want to at all embark in sort of meaningful cultural exchange in other places. So really it was important for me to start rebuilding some of those connections, to start thinking about what artists were thinking about in this kind of very transformed world that we'd emerged into after the pandemic. And so what we've done is restructure the festival into 3 art form streams: performance, knowledge, and nightlife. This is a sort of new structure for Asia Topa, with the performance program being sort of most of what you would think about as all of the kind of work in the festival. So all of the contemporary performance across dance, theatre, music, visual art. We work a lot across disciplines, or a lot of kind of multidisciplinary projects. And that performance program includes 33 works this year by artists from about 18 different countries across the region. One of the advantages of being a triennial festival for us is that we develop work a lot in partnership with other organizations. And one of the opportunities of only happening every 3 years is being able to commission work from scratch and going with the artist on the creative development journey of that work, really making sure it's achieved at a level of sort of scale and ambition. And it also, frankly, gives us time to raise the money to be able to put it on. And a very important part of that is building partnerships with other festivals and organizations internationally, so that work is developed in a number of different cultural contexts, often with collaborators from different countries, but also with co-investment from other co-commissioners and co-producers, so that the work doesn't just live and die in Asia Topa, that often sort of it creatively develops across a number of different countries and then goes on to tour across a number of different countries. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later, but that to me is very important in terms of the idea about sustainability, that the work doesn't just live and die with one institution in one context, that it's developed over a number of different contexts, has relationship to those places and then goes on to tour and have a further life. So that's very embedded in our vision. The coming festival, there's 33 works. 18 of them will be world premieres and 18 will be new commissions. So we're quite exhausted right now from that. But then we thought about how else people like to engage with festivals and what the role of a festival is beyond this sort of transaction of buying a ticket to a performance and coming and leaving, which really you can do at any time of the year, and thinking about sort of just this kind of offer of hospitality, a generosity of experiences, and offering sort of multiple angles into the works for multiple audiences. So if performance is 50% of our program, about 25% is this new program called Knowledge, which is a series of talks and workshops and public programs where the artists from the program sort of share their knowledge and the ideas behind their work. And all of these artists that we've gathered from around the Asia Pacific are able to share their skills with local creative communities as well. So that looks like a lot of workshops, particularly our keynote artist conversations look at relationships by artists across generations, which is really important for us. We're working with a lot of what we call the pioneering elders of Asia Pacific contemporary performance, but we also want to be open to new artists and new ideas. So the talks are structured so that they're sort of artists from older generations in conversation with artists from younger generations about legacy and impact and influence of their work. But the other 25% is another new stream called Nightlife. And Nightlife is a series of late night events that centres on Asiatopa's run out of Arts Centre Melbourne, which is the State Theatre Centre. It's essentially like the Opera House of Melbourne, Melbourne, but a lot less pretty than the Opera House. Really large scale theatre venue. Traditionally presents a lot of very traditional ballet, text-based theatre, opera. So Asiatopa is quite a shift in tone already for an organisation like the Arts Centre. But for Nightlife, we're actually going to transform one of the venues into a nightclub that's open every weekend night of the festival and invite guest curators from the nightlife scene across the Asia Pacific to actually sort of throw parties, but parties that are also the sites of substantial contemporary performance commissions. So it's about this collision of nightlife and contemporary performance culture. And that's really acknowledging that there's a lot of, in Australia, younger and more culturally diverse audiences that prefer to consume their culture in this way, right? That prefer to have a more social experience, which is less formal than sitting in a theatre for an hour or going to a gallery. That, there's a high amount of crossover in the artists who work across those programs, but it's like just very different contexts to experience the work. So we wanted to really honour those nightlife communities and create a really strong context for that nightlife to be honoured as a legitimate cultural practice in its own right. So that's kind of a little bit about how we've structured the three streams. But I guess both that all sort of ties in this idea of sustainability and partnerships, performance, and also nightlife in the way that we're working with Serendipity, actually. So we have a 2-year partnership here, which was developed after I visited 2 years ago, where I think both festivals have this interest in nightlife and electronic music. So we're kind of guest curating a number of DJs and electronic musicians into each other's festivals. And based on this visit that I had last year, we've commissioned Tukral and Tagra, the visual art curators for this year's Serendipity, to create a really large-scale participatory public artwork activated by performance that runs the length of Asiatopa, with the idea that then off the back of that, we'll bring either part of that project or another Asiatopa project to Serendipity next year. So this is kind of the way that we like to work in this kind of, friendship with other like-minded festivals and organizations who share a vision and can work sort of at scale over time with us. And there's lots more to talk about, but maybe we'll move on.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful introduction, and you while you gave that introduction, you also touched upon, valid points of travel. I think that's something that all international festivals have to deal with. But how do you maximize that? And partnerships, collaboration. So lots to pick from that. But let's hear from you, Natalia.
Thanks. So good morning and thanks for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. And this is a resume of Conde Duque, that it's a multidisciplinary contemporary art center. But we offer a lot of festival during the season too. So we are in the center of the city, in a heritage building. As you saw, it's huge and so complicated at the same time. So I think that 5 years ago, started to be in a contemporary center with a focus in the performing arts overall. And I think that respond to the city's need for a space dedicated to interdisciplinary contemporary culture. This is how we started in 2020 to put the focus on the audience and on the artist. We work along these two aims, supporting the development of local and international artists through carte blanche, exhibition, co-production that it's not very easy to find in Spain, and residencies. The artist line are artists who have their own voices, often hybrid, and who are researching new forms. On the other hand, local audience, situating the center as a diverse and inclusive venue. We work with the neighborhood through different festival with the institutions around us. We collaborate with another urban festival organized by the neighborhood, and every Christmas invite the chorus from the neighborhood too. And in the programming area, national and international shows that the audience are interested, because there's not many places in the city where they can attend. So we have an audience that is loyal, I think. There is a demand of international contemporary proposal, and we work in several networks with another partners in green tours, overall with Portugal and France. And we try to generate activities for many kinds of audience by age, interest in different disciplines, or by certain groups. So according to studies of audience, most of the user of performing arts are middle-aged women from liberal profession. But in other eyes, as talks, the age drops to 20 years old, and most are student. So we also have a lot of artists in the audience because they want to learn and they want to see what happened in the world. We have family, our audience too. We do different open activities, such dancing in the square, to bring the public closer to contemporary dance. Music concert, also free during the weekends. Cinema festival for kids, and an activity called Revuelta, that it's a very popular activity for families, where each session it's planned by different artists. But we also look at specific communities, such over 65, artists with mental health problems, or young audience. We develop a poem, Point of Movement is the name of the activity, from teenagers and young people, that they came to rehearsal dance as not professional, from voguing to commercial dance. And this has created a space that they call safe, especially for LGTB groups. So yeah, this is a kind of the landscape.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And I think talking about inclusivity the way you did is wonderful, because you're not looking at only making space for all kinds of artists, but also for all kinds of audiences. I think a festival is as successful as, the people who come there. So lovely to hear that, and we will definitely hear more. But over to you now, Smriti.
Hi, it's really strange to talk about the festival when we're sitting at the festival, so there's not much that I can say, but Serendipity Arts Festival is a series of investigations that we started. It's not about just the outcome. We wanted to question governance in foundations. What does foundations do in India? What is the failure of foundations? What is the success of culture? How do you put things together? What does it mean to be a curator? There is no word that we haven't investigated. I think what we see at the end of the day is not even close to what we go through during the year. Sustainability is such a big word. We had a panel a couple of years ago where everyone thinks that if they use a bamboo toothbrush, they're being sustainable. It's wrong. You're not being sustainable. Don't buy that bamboo toothbrush. And so sustainability of arts, sustainability in festivals is much beyond the environment, like Ruchira said. It is sustainability of artistic practice. It is sustainability of livelihoods. It's sustainability of cities. And so those are the things on which we actually build the festival. The festival didn't start as a program. It started as a critical response to what we felt wasn't working. And it was a case study. It was started as a case study to say, hey, let's do a pilot project in 2016 and see, will it work? It wasn't our city. We were outsiders. We were talking about community engagement. We still hear about it. So what does culture do? And I think those questions have emerged again and again, and we've found different solutions, innovative solutions. And here we are in our 9th edition, and I hope we've got some answers to the difficult questions that we've asked.
Thank you so much, Smriti. We will come back to you and hear an example of an innovative approach that you've used. But now, last but not the least, Gary.
Thank you. My name is Gary Kerr. I'm a professor of festival management at Edinburgh Napier University, and there's about 4 pillars to the work that we do inside the university. At Edinburgh Napier, our mission is to apply knowledge to empower our communities to create positive societal impact, and we do this through our research, through our teaching, through our external business engagement, and through working with organisations such as British Council. One of the most rewarding aspects of my role over the past 5 years has been indeed working with the South Asia Festival Academy, supported by the British Council in India. And in the South Asia Festival Academy, we've got a few of our alumni here, so give us a wave. Perfect. So we've got a few alumni here. We work with festival managers, artists, and curators, and creative professionals from across the South Asia region, and we help them develop the skills that will allow them to take their festivals to the next level, and also to help them develop their professional skills. So it's been really rewarding working with this particular community, and to be here at Serendipity Arts Festival, because tomorrow we have a delegation of our alumni who will be leading a panel discussion and facilitating roundtable discussions about EDI issues, about sustainability within the festival sector. And I think that's an important aspect of our work at the university, is that we want to do capacity building with festival managers across the world. We work here in South Asia, but also we work in Mexico, in the Middle East, and next year we'll go to the Western Balkans to do a similar program. But what's very important in terms of sustainability is that the participants, is that they become the next generation of people who are delivering the capacity building training locally in the region. So that's something that's very important to us. In terms of our teaching, we deliver festivals education at undergraduate, master's and doctoral level, and we really want to empower our students to become ethical festival managers who are addressing global social issues through their festivals in a very professional and ambitious manner. And I think there's a real transformative power of festivals to address global social issues, and we've been able to see that in some of the performances that I've seen here at Serendipity Arts Festival so far. In terms of my research, I do research equity, diversity and inclusion issues within festivals. So at the moment, I've just completed a large research project looking at how festivals can be more accessible for people living with dementia. Often, when someone receives a diagnosis for dementia, their social life comes to quite an abrupt end. They don't go to events, they don't go to festivals, even if it's a younger person with a dementia diagnosis, the social life ends. But I've been able to work with festivals and arts organisations to look at what they can do to engage the dementia community so that they can be more accessible and inclusive for them within the festival, in order to increase the person with dementia's social life and bring their social life closer towards their physical life expectancy. And then I guess, finally, in order to keep my own skills relevant as a festivals researcher and teacher, I also keep up my practice as a curator. My background is in science festivals, so over the past 3 years I've been working as a curator of Cheltenham Science Festivals, one of the bigger science festivals in the UK, and I've been working with this festival to make computing science and cybersecurity more accessible to a diverse range of audiences. Typically, science, and in particular computing science, is very male-dominated. In the UK, it's very middle class, and it's a sort of stereotype which exists within that sector of a highly educated white man from a middle class background. So as curator of the festival, I established an inclusion advisory board, which brought together a diverse range of communities, and they came in as co-curators of the festival. So I had representation from computing scientists and engineers who were from women and girls communities, from disabled communities, neurodiverse communities, from LGBT and trans organisations. And this inclusion advisory group helped me as the curator create content that was meaningful and accessible to a wide range of audience, which smashed and challenged the stereotype of science and the wider, in particular, computing science sector. But also they helped me engage audiences which I would not otherwise have been able to engage without their networks and their connections. And it was quite an authentic connection because those audiences that I wanted to engage in the festival, people representing those audiences had come in as co-curators and helped develop content and had a visible presence during the festival. So I think that's kind of a brief summary of what I do.
Thank you so much, Gary. And I think we heard a little bit of that from everyone, this focus on knowledge exchange, and, whether that's in terms of talks like the one that we have here or in the programs that you spoke about. You have knowledge as one of the, pillars of the festivals that you do. And we have some festival managers here in our audience, as you said. We're very proud to have some of our SAFCA alumni here, and you gave a couple of very good examples of how you've looked at inclusion, and maybe I'll use that to segue into the next question, where maybe I'd ask each of you to share examples by which you might have designed your festival to be able to make it more accessible, or to bring in a certain audience that you were keen to invite into your festival. Given that there are a lot of young festival managers here, I'm sure they'd be happy to hear of experiences that they might be able to then take forward through their festivals.
I think for me, it really comes down to, I think, this idea of guest curatorship is really interesting and important in terms of broadening the scope, and especially in a festival like Asiatopa, where we couldn't be representative of every culture and community across the Asia Pacific, but also in terms of Australia. I mean, one of the really important cultural conversations in Australia that you have to engage with in the arts is the relationship between our First Peoples and the broader sort of Australian cultural landscape. And one of my first thoughts around, why also hold an Asia Pacific festival from Australia, where, essentially the mainstream of Australian culture is still very hung up on our British colonial inheritance, which is also based on the oppression of our First Peoples. And then there's been years and years of migration and multiculturalism. So the Asia Pacific is, there was exchange between Australia and Asia long before Australia was colonized. So these are all kind of things that I've been thinking about in the curation of our program, and thinking about what it means to celebrate Australia as an Asia Pacific country, for example. And so the first step for that for me was to decide that our focus on Australian artists would be threefold. First and primarily, it was on First Nations artists and their relationship to the Asia Pacific. Second of all, artists, Asian Australian artists, essentially. There are huge South Asian, East Asian and Southeast Asian populations in Australia that have been the result of generations of migration. So this is actually part of our cultural fabric, but one that is not profiled internationally very often. And then the third was indeed any sort of artists or any cultural background who have forged or are forging self-determined meaningful ties with their peers in the region. And so in terms of that First Nations piece for me, it was really important, not being a First Nations Australian person myself or having a First Nations team on staff, that the projects themselves had First Nations leadership embedded in them. So they were originated from those First Nations communities and self-determined in terms of their structure. And an example of that, I guess, would be a project that's led by some senior Yolngu artists from Arnhem Land in the northeast of Australia, who are collaborating with a group of Paiwan and Amis artists who are First Nations Taiwanese artists. That project is based on a Yolngu cultural songline about being visited by an ancestor thousands of years ago before Australia was colonized, who's now believed to be a First Nations Taiwanese person. So that for me is about reinstating the Indigenous knowledge systems that predated Australia's colonial history, and then sort of working in partnership with the Indigenous leaders, working sort of on those projects to determine the best form, process, and just be a facilitator as a festival. We also have a really strong relationship between us and the Yirramboi Festival, which is a contemporary First Nations performance festival in Melbourne. It's Australia's only First Nations-led contemporary performance festival. And so we have invited them to guest curate a night in our nightlife program. And we also just have we just meet up all the time and exchange knowledge and information so that it's another anchor when those First Peoples projects arrive in Australia that, you know, we have a peer First Nations-led organisation that's deeply connected to us and our work. So that's one example of how we're trying to sort of broaden out sort of who's centred in the narrative of our festival.
Okay, for us, it's a little different. The main objective is that everyone feel represent in the center. That's mean giving a voice to those who haven't had one, that are many. So in the section of the activities, I write down the type of audience, for example, in terms of age, childhood are very important for the future. So this first relationship with a cultural center, even when they are teenager and stopped coming, it's a very like a basement that they back. So, but also in terms of communities, Chinese community that it's a big in Madrid or Latin America are very important too. Young people that are constant developing new forms, such try spoken word and the clubbing culture or with I think that it's so important that they see on the stage or they see his own activities in institution that it's like that they feel that are invite to come. With regard to the state program, I also design a diverse and inclusive program, for example, different continents out of Europe. That is not easy too. One of the pioneer female manager that founded the Kunsten Festival, Free Leisen, said that I want to see the world through the eyes of 100 other people, and maybe I can understand something about it. And I try to keep these sentences always with me. I think that it's important task for artist directors to represent on stage all the people welcome, a balance between gender, race, and also disciplines, and a balance in terms of level development of the artist carries from local and young to established and international artists. I said stop. Sorry.
No problem. It's a very big word, inclusivity. I mean, when we started, we said we want the festival to be accessible, we wanted to be inclusive, we wanted to be sustainable. But we realized as we passed time that it had many layers to it. And we didn't want to checkbox it. We didn't want to say, okay, we'll be inclusive if we do this, or we'll be accessible if we do this. Obviously, with accessibility, it's easier. There's a government mandate. How do you make your buildings accessible, etc., etc. But inclusivity was a difficult one. So when we started the festival in the first year, we said the easiest one to tackle was economics. So we said, if we keep the festival free, everyone can come. So that means it's inclusive. So we were very gleeful about it. Nobody came. First 2 days the festival was empty and we were like, why aren't people coming? It's free. We thought that is it. That's all that was needed. If it's free, people will come. Well, didn't work. Luckily for us, it's kind of grown through word of mouth. We still question whether, and I'm talking about the economics right now because both of you have mentioned so much about inclusivity in terms of other aspects, and I don't want to delve into that, but just to say, for us, economic barrier, we never wanted culture to have an economic barrier to experience it. And so how do you negotiate that transactional space where you're saying, does it have to be transactional for people to really engage with culture? And then does it make it truly inclusive? In terms of the kind of people who come to the festival, we refuse to define our target audience. Every boardroom where we go to for money, they'll say, what's your target audience? And we're like, we will not tell you what our target audience is, because it's meant for everyone. And when you say the word everyone, it means that it's inclusive. So the minute you start defining it, you're going to leave someone out. So for us, everyone is a much bigger word than saying that, okay, we have done this and this, because we feel that if it's open and we make the place safe, and if we are reclaiming public spaces where people feel comfortable, everyone will come. And that everyone encompasses everyone, I hope. In terms of specific aspects of inclusivity, we have a mandate that we give our curators, unlike the both of you. Serendipity Arts Foundation does not curate. We have eminent curators. I can see Mayuri sitting in the audience, and we give them a mandate saying we want you to program something which is inclusive, and then it's on the interpretation of the curator of that year, who's the guest curator, to figure out what their definition of inclusivity is. So you'll see over the past 9 years, our inclusivity definition has grown because of these eminent curators who've tweaked it, redefined it in terms of practice, in terms of what's been a part of the festival, what we aspire to bring. And so those are the two sides of inclusivity for us.
From my perspective, as a curator, there's a few things that we've done to try to make our festival more inclusive for a range of audience, but maybe I'll just pull out a couple of specific examples. With the festival, we knew that we were perhaps not as inclusive as we could have been with people who were autistic or from neurodiverse backgrounds. So we engaged a neurodiverse artist and brought him in as a co-curator. And one of the tangible things that we did from a festival management perspective was we created a space within the festival, which was a chill out zone where people who were feeling overstimulated or overwhelmed could go into this chill out zone. It was very relaxed, so there were sort of some beanbags, some fidget toys which people could play with, and some ear cancelling headphones. So people with and without autism and with and without neurodiverse conditions use this space as a space for relaxation and getting away from the festival, which can sometimes be a little bit overstimulating. So this was one tangible thing that we did. But also, when we were doing this and when we were speaking to other members of the Inclusion Advisory Board, the trans representative on the board had said, actually, this space is very inclusive for trans audiences because there are commonalities between the needs of the trans community and neurodiverse communities in terms of having a separate space to go to when things get a little bit overwhelmed, and being able to disconnect for a few moments from the festival. So that was one thing that we did, and it cost us kind of next to nothing really. It was very low cost, but we received really positive feedback on this as well from those communities. When I was engaging with the local LGBT Pride organisation, we brought them in as a co-producer for the festival, but it was a two-way partnership because we went to the local Pride and we did some activities at their festival as well. So the partnership really benefited both of us to promote our organisations at each other's events. And one of the things that organisation had said that what the LGBT community need, particularly the young people who come through the festival doors, is they want to see representation at the festival. So we gave Pride lanyards to staff who could choose to wear a Pride lanyard in order to show their support for the community. And throughout the festival, we had a range of different flags representing the LGBT communities within the festival. When I was creating the evaluation strand for the festival, what I didn't want to do was to do a form, because we know that there were in the past notoriously low response rates. But what we what we thought collectively is, what is the one piece of information that we want people to tell us? And actually, all we wanted to know was, how did the festival make you feel? And that was our question. So just how did it make you feel? We weren't interested in what you learned. It didn't matter to us if you learned about science or you wanted to be a scientist. All we wanted was for you to feel included within the space, and to know that if you wanted a career in science, then there will be space for you. So we created an evaluation board, which was a graffiti board, and people could just pick up a Sharpie and write on the board. And the question was, how did the festival make you feel? We got 10,000 items of graffiti, and I got my research assistant to analyze all of this. So bless her, she coded all 10,000 items of graffiti. But there were a few prominent themes, but one of the major themes was that people felt seen and people felt safe within the space. So that came out, the word safety was written a lot within the board. And, people were using the board to be very open, to say, actually, I feel very safe in this space, and I feel that now I'm ready to go home and to tell my parents my news that I have to tell them, that's been bottling up inside me. So that was one way that we just really spoke to the different communities and asked them, how can we be more inclusive and actually do what it is that they told us to do.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. How did it make you feel? I think that's an idea I'm sure lots of us would want to take back and, implement in the work we do. I remember ages ago working with teenagers on a project, and one of the best feedback I got was when this young person said that, I loved this project because I could just be myself. And how few spaces allow you that freedom, I suppose. So thank you so much for sharing. I think we have some brilliant tips that we can take back. I certainly have ideas that I would share with our partners when we have projects with the British Council. We always, of course, inclusion is an area that we talk about irrespective of which project we are working at, and see how different ways we can look at improving how inclusive our project is. And I think, as Smriti said, this is something that's evolving. I don't think with every festival, every edition, every project, there are new insights, there are new audiences that you meet, and new ways in which perhaps we strive to become more sustainable. So with that, I will ask you the last question, after which we'll open the floor to the audience. So what does the future of a sustainable festival look like? What do you think? I mean, we talked about some exciting examples from the work that you're already doing in this space, but what is it, that one thing that you feel you want to do, or what would a sustainable festival look like? Not an easy question. But I'll ask nonetheless.
For me, a sustainable festival, it's about connectedness, and it's about sort of thinking perhaps longer term, longer and deeper. I think in festival land, there's a lot of temptation, we were just talking about before, to churn through a lot of projects in a very short space of time. And it becomes like this very short fuse, and the festival becomes this very intense, very brief kind of moment in time. And for me, sustainability means thinking, thinking about that moment and how to make it the most impactful, but also thinking across a longer time scale, and what the legacy of your work is, and what relationships that work is building, and how those relationships connect, especially for an international festival, with other places and other communities over time. And this, for me, I guess there's a really unique opportunity with Asiatopa being triennial to think in that sort of longer term way, for it not just to be about this very presentational moment of outcome, but about the sort of creative development journey of working with artists and partners over that 3-year term, and hopefully then beyond that 3-year term, so that one idea or project not only has a very sort of long life and continues to evolve and travel beyond the frame of the festival itself, but that one idea leads to another as well. And even just being here at Serendipity for 24 hours has given me so many ideas around sort of the future of this relationship and partnership, which I think just comes from a long-term investment, and comes from not only thinking about this point of outcome in the festival, but a sort of a creative journey that kind of leads into and out of the festival, that lasts over a longer period of time and leaves space for projects to evolve and grow. And I think for a lot of artists that we work with as well, there's a lot of pressure to deliver a project and then very quickly move on to the next project. And I think increasingly I'm really interested in artistic projects that really morph and evolve over time, or that happen in a networked way between a lot of different places, and that leaves space and room for being sort of revisited and expanded. So yeah, just trying to think beyond this kind of very intensive frame of the festival into this kind of longer term thinking about being able to sort of follow creative trajectories and build relationships, deepen relationships, and expand the scope of what we're doing. That was a bit of an abstract answer. I'm sorry.
I think that I take your answer too, of course, because it's so important to think about the long term, and which is these small things that start to grow up after the years, the relationship with the audience or the relationship with the artist. And I think that this is very very far from the market. and for me, there's a couple of issues about, because now we are living in a very political convulsive times. So I believe that the festival should celebrate what is not so present. I would put the focus in the public spaces, space where we can share, that are becoming less in our cities, share venues and share experience. Be diverse as our societies are, and make everyone feel comfortable and include, of course, and support the develop of the culture in order to imagine new futures, I think. And I think that all these things are not so common, so it's important that we all together continue to working about it. So yeah, thanks.
I'll take a more pragmatic view on sustainability. I mean, obviously, we come from Delhi, we come to Goa, we bring thousands of artists, we bring crew, we bring team. So after COVID, we really questioned on why we were doing this. What does sustainability mean? What are we doing to the city? So we're looking at policy level changes. Electric cars are not allowed in Goa. We're trying to see if we can have electric shuttles. We're actually looking at how can we define our own ESG matrix. What is the material that we can reuse? What are the things that, in terms of infrastructure, that won't make a very strong carbon footprint? So we're hoping to turn into a more, I mean, we can't get to net zero because we have to fly artists. We need to give them food. They need taxis. But what we can do is look at our own infrastructure. We're looking at readaptive reuse of buildings. Working with older public spaces, like you said, is very, very good for energy because they're already cooler. You don't need 24 degrees. The comfort level can be at 27. People still enjoy the art. I mean, so we're looking at very practical ways of making the festival environmentally happy, so as to say. It's been an ongoing process. So like our shuttle service was started because we hope that people wouldn't bring cars into Panjim to avoid congestion. Our primary responsibility is to the citizens and to the city of Panjim. We don't want a festival to disrupt what's happening in the city. We are not saying that everybody is a stakeholder, but everybody needs to be comfortable in their homes. And so those kind of parameters we've defined for ourselves. We moved out to Nagali Hills, which is a big arena where you all would have gone, obviously, because we lost a venue and then we had to find another ground. But it's just happier because we have enough ample parking. So it's about what is the sustainability outlook towards the city and what are we doing to it when we come in as a festival, and can we maintain status quo, if not make it worse. So I think that's what we're really looking at for the next couple of years.
From my perspective, I would agree. I think the future should be focused on environmental sustainability. I think that's where I think the most work needs to be done for many festivals. With regards to social sustainability, I think many festivals really demonstrate the transformative power that festivals can have in using art to challenge the status quo and to drive social change and to change people's mindsets. And long may this continue, and long may festivals continue to address social issues through their curation, but also through their festival management practices. In terms of environmental sustainability, about 2 years ago, I worked with 20 Mexican festival managers and helped them develop an environmental sustainability action plan within their festivals. And they were able to go off and implement these measures within their own festivals. As a result of that course, I created a toolkit for festival managers on how their festivals can be more accessible, and that toolkit's publicly available. I'll be happy to share it with anyone. It's a series of activities that people can do just as a starting point to make some progress with regards to sustainability. So I think there's a potential to do work there. One of the things that we also do at Edinburgh Napier is we don't just teach people about sustainability. We actually go to festivals and assess the sustainability practices and write a report on areas of strength, but also on areas of development. And we've got a very rigorous process for that. And we work in partnership with a Greener Future, an organisation which provides sustainability accreditation and certification to festivals. And if you meet the quality standard, then you get certification that you can put on your website and other social media comms. Because I think audiences are increasingly demanding that festivals become more sustainable. And certainly in the UK, we see that young people are looking at the sustainability credentials of music festivals before they go ahead and purchase their tickets. So it is becoming, top of the agenda for some audiences. So I think, the future is maybe to address our own sustainable practices within festivals, but also to use art and the curation process of festivals to challenge the audience's mindset on sustainability and their approach to the climate crisis. Festivals have a great opportunity to plant the seed for behaviour change. You might not change the behaviour of your audiences right away, but if you expose audiences to different types of art and they're all linked to sustainability, and the more seeds that you plant in someone's head, then the more likelihood that those seeds will grow in the future. So the attitude can slowly change, and then behaviour change can come further down the line. We see this with regards to the great work the festivals do on addressing social issues, but also it's possible that this can be applied through changing audience mindsets to make them become more proactive to the climate crisis.
Thank you so much. And I think you're spot on. We can use festivals really and lead by example, to create this behavioral change in audiences and even in the artists that we work with. Everyone may not be thinking of this on the top of their minds, but, when a festival sort of, like Smriti said, when, we speak to the curator and you specifically say that we want to look at inclusion, then that becomes a mandate, and then that lens is applied in the work that they do. And that toolkit sounds great, so I'm sure there'll be many of us who will want the toolkit, and I think that is such an important task that all of us have to share these resources. If we found ways in which we can be more sustainable, or even I think the room that you spoke about for just a quiet space for section of audiences, I think that's like you said, it's not a very expensive solution at all, but it's a really wonderful solution and goes a long way to show your commitment towards being open to all kinds of audiences. So I think that's also something that is a responsibility on all of us in the audience to share practices that we have been able to use in our festivals, and hope that there'll be more who can take lead from that. So with that, since I spoke about all of you, I will also give you the chance to ask questions. I think it's a small room, so maybe we can manage without mics, but if you can raise your hand, then we know where to look. And if there's a question specifically to one of the panelists, please let us know who. or else we can just, ask everyone to answer. No question there. Do you need a mic? No, I think they do need a mic, sorry.
Hi, so my name is Aura Nahita. I'm a music curator from France, and I'm very happy to be here at this festival. I have a question for all of you, actually. So our activities, as Mahalla is the name of the organization that I founded now 4 years ago, that is dedicated to showcasing emerging music from the Swana region in France. So we showcase artists from the region and from the diasporas that are living in France and across Europe. And we have only music programs. We started as a small collective, and we run events throughout the year in different venues, different cities of France. And my question was, did you all started as festivals, or did you, before becoming a festival, did you run yearly activities? Because what we found, the question of sustainability for me in my context was really that in the last few years, people were starting to realize that having one big main event a year was very challenging in terms of sustainability for all the reasons that you've mentioned during the talk, and that it would be a different way to approach the different problematic that you have in your organization, to build an audience slowly throughout the year and have different events and a different approach. But so in that regards, it was really great for us to build our audience slowly through different capacities of event. But the main struggle we have, and maybe that's a different aspect of sustainability that wasn't really discussed, is financial sustainability. And so now we're at the stage where we're wondering if we should reach the stage of a festival, because to be more visible politically with what we are trying to bring to France, which is representation of minorities on stage, and also to have more funds, because France right now is in a really challenging moment for arts, and the public funding are decreasing every year, and private funding is really rare for small events. So did you have this question in your organizations? Did you start as small events and then decided to go for a festival? And if you did, how did you feel that impacted your sustainability as an organization?
So Asiatopa, because it's fairly new, it was always designed as a triennial festival. And in terms of financial sustainability, I mean, one of the advantages of being triennial is that you have 3 years to raise the money for each festival, which is great because we operate across the Arts Centre, but also 15 other venues across Melbourne. So it's a really sort of large scale undertaking. And commissioning is also super expensive. So it was always about the other sort of context of Melbourne specifically is that it's a city that's very, very saturated in cultural offerings. In Australia, it probably has the most arts organisations, the most stages, the most galleries, the most spaces. So there's this very constant churn through the year of competing activity that it's very hard to sort of get your head above water and be recognized. I mean, we have incredible audiences. It's sort of the cultural, sort of artistic programming is part of the city's cultural identity. But then the challenge is really what the unique offering to those audiences are. There's a lot of overlap between programs and a lot of overlap between, dozens of festivals that happen year round in the city. So we're really thinking about, with Asiatopa, what is the unique contribution to the cultural life of Melbourne that this festival is making. And for me, it's about bringing the local scene into dialogue with an international scene, and particularly with the region that we're in, the Asia Pacific, which is very underrepresented year round on our stages. So it was an opportunity to have this one very sort of dense moment in time where this kind of thriving, very busy local scene comes into conversation with the international scene, which can only happen at a festival, in a festival environment at that scale. So that's a few of the reasons I think that the festival model works for us.
Actually, it's very different context because we started Serendipity Arts Festival because India has scale and the number of people that exist in the country could create a success of impact, and we could prove that culture impacts societies. We didn't find a model where we could prove impact with smaller events, and also your public funding is dwindling. We have none. So, it wasn't a choice of public funding anyways. So we always started as a large festival. You have a center. I have it.
Relationship between year-round programming and festivals. Year-round programming and then but also festivals and
Because you do both, right?
Yeah, I do
Smaller
both.
ones and
Yeah,
then the big one.
I do both, and both has his own context. I think that for example, the programming of performing art, theater, dance, and hybrid in the theater, or the talks that are during the season, work very, very good. It's like develop the audience, and yeah, it's something that now it's so established program. But for the festival that we has been developed during these years, for example, we at the beginning we start with a dance festival on the big squares that you see that are huge, and we start step by step with only 2 companies the first year, the second 3, 4, 5, 6, and the last year that the audience, I can't believe it, I was like, I was in the audience sitting on the floor and seeing back and say, but what's that? How they arrive here? I don't know, because it's contemporary dance, But so I think that step by step, yeah, both are important. I think. I don't think that it's one or the other. It's, yeah.
I'll maybe draw upon some research that I've done on festival business models. So I've published a fair bit on festival business models, particularly the business models of startup festivals. And my advice would be to go at the rate that is appropriate for your organization. So if you're comfortable at the moment doing a program of events rather than becoming a festival, then that's the most appropriate choice for you. I've done a lot of research with festivals who became festivals very quickly and became quite prominent, but didn't yet have the business model in place to support the extensive range of activities that they were doing. And as a result, I would say, probably most cases, those festivals run for a few years. They don't have the right business model. The staff become overworked because they're unable to, to expand the team due to finances. And as a result, the festival team gets so burnt out that the festival becomes discontinued. And my research shows that it often doesn't pick back up again after that. So I would say, grow your festival at a sustainable rate. And when the time is right to become a festival, to shift away, maybe becoming from being a program of events to a festival, which has a clear start date and end date, then be determined by your business model and the capacity within your team.
And I think another point, I completely agree. I think it has to be a decision that you take depending on your resources and audience, events, infrastructure, etc. But the good thing is a festival also doesn't have a minimum period. So you can have a 3-month festival, a weekend festival, or a month long. So I think it's the idea of celebration or showcasing, which is what we term as festival, and bringing together of it, right? So hope you got some tips, and hope we'll see your festival soon. Any other questions?
Serendipity Arts Festival, one of the participants, and I have attended all 9 editions.
Oh, wow.
Even online also. And as you were speaking, we were reflecting, and we always tell, Prerna ji is there, Smriti ji is there, we always tell that for us, it is our annual cultural pilgrimage. And as I was reflecting what this festival has given me in terms of impact, because we are talking about sustainability, it has given us, of course, entertainment, because that's also very important. It has given us education. So I'll talk about, because I'm a professor, so I'll talk about a framework which I just developed, 6 E's to 3 C's. That's what my takeaway from festival is. So it has given us entertainment, education, evolved conversations in these 9 years, engagement with variety of different things, experience, and of course exposure to different cultures, to different art forms. And what it has done to us, me, my husband and my daughter, it has given us compassion towards self and towards others. It has given us curiosity to know more about the art forms which we were not familiar with. I never knew that culinary art is also an art form. So now I know. So it has given us a curiosity and of course creativity to express. So I think from 6 E's to 3 C's. And I really thank Serendipity Arts Foundation for putting this together. And just on a lighter note, maybe these things are being recorded. We preponed my sister-in-law's wedding in 2018 because we wanted to attend Serendipity Arts Festival.
Wow, I can't even imagine how that must make you feel. Smriti, Prerna, well done, all of you. That's what a beautiful testimonial, really fabulous. There you go. I think all our questions are answered in that comment. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing. Yeah, if you have, do we have any last question? Oh, sorry, I see behind you. I can just.
Thanks for this wonderful conversation so far. I'm going to take the opportunity of us having so many different representatives of different geographical festivals over here. Can you talk about your funding models as generally or as specifically as you want? And Mr. Kerr, if you could talk about then, once they've shared, any trends that you've seen either basis geography, basis scale of festivals, basis genre, just to sort of wrap up, thanks.
I can start because I am shortest answer, I think, because we are. It's a public center from the town hall, so it's all the funding are public. This is very nice, but this is have shadows too, because it's depend of the politicians. It's one line or the other. So yeah, I suppose that maybe he has more explanation about that, this model. So.
Well, I'm the opposite. It's really complicated with Asiatopa. So it's part of this bigger Art Centre Melbourne, which is the sort of State Theatre Centre. And there's a sort of philanthropic kind of fund from the Art Centre that sort of is our sort of foundational funding. That fund pays my salary and our admin costs. And then the other base funding is a $1.5 million grant from the state government, which is matched by $1 million from a philanthropic organisation. So it's a sort of matched government philanthropy model. So it's about sort of 2 or 3 million, that's our foundation, and then we raise all of the rest from other project grants or funding sources up to about 7 million. So for every dollar we make, we raise an extra $3 or $4 on top of that. So we find that having that strong funding base is enough for us to invest in the first stages of projects and then leverage that funding for more presentation funding. So that sort of foundation funding is really important. It runs out at the end of every festival. So after this edition of Asiatopa, my next job is to raise that foundational 2 million, and then the other 5 million. So it's not a great funding model because it's quite precarious from festival to festival, and the festival just expands and contracts depending on how much funding we secure.
Well, it's difficult to raise money. You can see the board of sponsors that we have. We raise money festival to festival. It's very difficult to get people to commit for a longer period of time. Mr. Munjal is obviously the founder patron. The way we work is that he gives a loan to the foundation and we repay the loan. So there's no time within which we need to raise the money because it's a very quick turnaround. There's a lot of loan on our head right now. We have to pay a lot of money back to him. But he ensures that no artist, no vendor is not paid. And that's a huge commitment from a patron to make. The reason we have this format also is because we want that beyond all our times, mine, Mr. Munjal, Prerna's, everyone's in the organization thrives. So we want to get to a point where we find the sweet spot on how much money is there in the market and how much of the festival we can do. But we felt that we had to invest a substantial amount to first establish ourselves and then get to a point where we start using finances to determine what the scale of the project is. We couldn't have worked the other way around. It would have been a bit of a failure. This is only private money. We don't take government money because it comes with strings attached and we are slightly wary of it. So we don't take any government funding, but we have people like British Council and IFI who are very kind, who have supported our projects. So we have project partners, we have festival partners. We've done this well this year, so we're okay. We're okay this year.
Yeah, with regards to trends in festival funding, I guess, the funding landscape is very challenging, across, different regions in the UK. It's challenging. Here, I'm sure it's challenging as well. And, from genre to genre, they each have their own unique challenges. I guess, the major trend that we see in the past couple of years is audiences taking an active interest in where festivals are getting their funding from. So in the UK, for example, we've seen audiences protest to festivals that they attend, that they disagree with the values of the funder. And this poses a harder challenge upon festival managers to ensure that their funding model is ethical and that the values of the funders are well aligned to their own values. So for example, in the Edinburgh International Book Festival, our major literature festival within the city, we saw some protests at the festival this year, which meant that the festival had to make a decision to reject funding from Baillie Gifford, which was a major investor into the festival. And actually, on one hand, it's good that the festivals perhaps only aligning to organisations where it sees its values are aligned to, but on the other hand, it meant that it had to reduce its outreach program going to schools. So this had to be reduced within the festivals. The free books to school children didn't quite reach all the schools in Scotland. It only went to some schools and things like that. And we've also saw some protests at other festivals across the UK where energy suppliers are supporting the festivals. Particularly, this is a challenge in science festivals where actually, we do need scientists and engineers to go and work in energy and to innovate within the sector so that it's more greener. So the removal of funding from potential future workforces of the attendees attending the festival is a challenge. So I think, there's a huge challenge for festivals to get funding, but I think now it has to be the right funding for that festival, because I think you want to avoid having protests at your festival. So making sure the funding is ethical in the first place.
Hi. My question is more related to festivals within the Indian context. And as we can see right now, we're experiencing a cultural moment where there are a lot of festivals across different disciplines that are sort of coming up in the country. I just want to hear from the panelists. There are a lot of, India is so multicultural, and there which also means that there are a lot of socio-cultural and economic barriers that we are faced with. And a festival, arts festival as a model, as a concept is very new. And there's also a significant amount of audience development work that needs to happen in order to make these spaces, accessible for people. So although there is a lot of work, active work happening in terms of making these spaces accessible for say people with disabilities, or with neurodiverse or learning disabilities, etc. Can you shed some light on how the work that festivals are doing currently to overcome especially economical barriers and to make these spaces accessible in that sense to all segments of society?
I think I mentioned that we started the festival and we said it was free because we didn't want there to be any financial transaction. I mean, today the theatre and the foundry are charged at 299 because we realized that there was a sweet spot between commitment, like registering for a free ticket and not turning up. And that became a huge problem. So we were trying to find, we started at 99 last year, and we realized that at 99 rupees you had no value for it and you still didn't turn up. And so the people who were lining outside to buy on-ground tickets was an operational nightmare. So like I said, it evolves. It's very difficult to do a definitive thing to say this is going to break all barriers. I wish it was as simple as that. It kind of evolves year to year. For us, I think, and we talk about this a lot in the office, it's how your space is designed. That's what makes it accessible. It's not about the ramps. It's about, is your design inviting? Is it something that people will see and feel that they belong there? It's the difference in being aspirational and inspirational. You go to a mall, you're aspired to buy. You go to a cultural space, you're inspired to go. And that's the power of design for us. So for us, everything is really well thought of. Like the materials we use, are they shiny? Are they glitzy? When you look at, say, a fabric panel, what is the color? Is it offsetting the city? Do you associate with the color? You don't associate with the color. So you'll see our brand language changes every year. It doesn't change, and we get a lot of flack for it because obviously Mr. Munjal is our founder patron. So he's like, your logo is everything. And we're like, no, we'll change it every year. And he's like, no, that's not how it works. But we feel with the worldview and the way you associate with color and design, it needs to change. So it becomes a little more accepting of everyone who wants to walk in. So while we don't want to look really high end or exclusive, but we want to be well designed. And that's how we've created the spaces that we have. And we are lucky, we have public spaces. People come here anyways. So I don't think it should deter anyone from entering a park that they anyways go for a walk to. So
Thank you so much. And thank you. I think that was a brilliant panel and a fabulous audience. Thank you so much for listening to us, asking the questions, and look forward to engaging with you more. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.